Hello, my name is Elise, or Caffeine and Misery, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite decks that got a new double rare piece of support from DZ-BT-13 Prelate Clash, and a deck I haven't talked about in a long time, I think, anyways. That being the Destined one of Exceedance, Impauldio. Impauldio is a deck that has its own unique gauge that kind of scales off of how many cards are in it. Along with that, it has a rear guard that can do drive checks, so you have a lot of hand to work with and a bit of really good power because the whole front row will scale with it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the deck, starting, of course, with one of the best brand case starters, Falstaff, and Progret, who, when placed from writing a grade 0 card, you reveal a grade 3 Impauldio in your Rhine deck, and put a system code Exceed into the order zone. What is system code Exceed? Well, it is a token set order that has the continuous ability that you cannot ride grade 3 rare cards without Impauldio in their card names, and you can have automod gauges. And while in the order zone, when a card is put into your damage zone during your turn, you pick a card from drop and put it face up as an automod gauge. If you have 3 or less automods and this damage check revealed a card that wasn't a trigger, your Vanguard will get +5. If you have 4 more automod gauges, it'll just freely give that 5k. Moving into our grade 2, we've got Impauldio, who, when rolled upon by grade 3 Impauldio, you put the top card of your deck face up as an automod gauge. Then you can take a card from your automod gauge and put it into hand. That is not mandatory, so if you don't see anything you want back, you can just leave it there. And of course, the one in the hour, the girl herself, Impauldio, who, as an act once per turn, for single counterblast, you can take a card from drop, put it as a face-up automod gauge, check the top 5 cards of your deck, and call a grade 3 or lower card from among them. And she gets the continuous skill that all of your front row units get 5k for every 2 of your automod gauges. Along with that, her divine skill is an act that if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and you have 4 more automod gauges, for counterblast 1 discarding a card from hand, she gets crit +1, drive +2. This, in my opinion, is one of the greatest defensive skills in the standard format. It's just doubling your drive checks to make sure you have more cards in hand to guard and forcing your opponent to use resources to guard it. Even if it's just eating a sentinel, that's 1 sentinel gone. Going to the main deck now, of course, we're on 3 Persona rides and 4 copies of Skyleap Conversion, Finstar, who the first continuous ability scales depending on how many automod gauges you have. At 2 or more, it gets +5k, and at 8 or more, this unit's drive cannot be reduced by card effects. On that, when he attacks, if you have 4 more automod gauges and no drive checks were performed by rear guards this turn, for single counterblast, he can do drive checks but gets drive -1, and at the end of the battle, it'll bind itself. Moving into our grade 2 lineup, we are, of course, on 4 copies of Nebula Invoke Dragon, which, when he attacks for a single Soul Blast, you can have him get 5k for the turn, or if you have 5 or more automod gauges, +15 instead. And if you have 4 more automod gauges, it becomes a 20k Interceptor. Along with that, we're on 2 copies of the brand new Fuedo, who, in the gauge zone, when your grade 3 or greater Impauldio is placed during the ride phase, as long as you don't have a regard of the same name, you can call it from your automod gauge, and if you do, you take a card from drop and put it face up as an automod gauge. On that, when he attacks, if you have 3 or more gauges, it'll get +5 until end of battle. If you have 5 or more, it'll get 10 instead. Also on 1 copy of Radio Arane, who, during your turn, as long as you have 4 more automod gauges, is a 15k booster, and at the end of the battle, the attacker boosted, as long as you have a card put into the automod gauge this turn, you can retire him to retire one of your opponent's rear guards. He's just one of spot removal, the occasional big booster. Moving outside the archetypal stuff, though, I'm on 4 copies of Vondo Regenburg, which is the Pride Cycler for Brickgate. When discarded from hand to ride, or placed on the rear guard circle other than by a unit card's ability from hand, you can reveal a card in your grad deck with a Persona Ride icon, and if you do, or if you're on a Vanguard with a Persona Ride icon, you can Soul Blast 1 to get a Persona Shield ticket, which is a grade 0 or 1 Blitz order, I don't remember which grade it is. That gives 10k to the attacked unit and allows you to play a second Blitz order in the turn, and it cannot be discarded during your turn. Along with that, when he attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, it'll get +5, so it'll be a 15k beater. And running our grade 2, we've got Vermeil Exordia, the Brantgate Ace unit, whose unique skill is that when placed on rare other than during the battle phase, it'll get 5. Then EV3, you get to check the top 3 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, put it into hand, and shuffle. Or if the order zone has 2 or more of any player's cards, you get to check the top 5 instead. Note that that does not count gauge, so you'll never get to do the 5. Along with that, when he attacks, if your opponent's maker's grade 3 or greater, he'll get 5, and for setting a order, for resting a set order from the order zone, after that, it'll get another 5. Going into our grade 1s, we're on 3 copies of Headway Router Dragon. This has the on-place ability that as long as you have an auto-mod gauge for 3 energy, you can check the top 5 cards of your deck to pick a unit with a different name from him and call it to rearguard circle. And when you boost, as long as you have 5 or more automods for soul, it becomes a 13k booster. Moving on from our board builder, we've got 4 copies of Odd Warfront, who has an ability that, first off, as long as you have 4 more automod gauges, it'll reduce the cost by 2 energy. But at the end of the battle, you boost it. As long as you have a system code Exceed in the order zone, you can Energy Blast 2 and retire to draw a card, so it'll deck thin a little bit for you. And when you spend the automod gauge by the original act of your Impauldio, so the once per turn ability, you can pick a unit and give it 5k. And if you have 2 or more copies of him already in, when he goes in, he gets to pick 2 units to give 5 instead of 1. So he's draw, and he gives you a little extra plussing off of going into the order zone. Because this deck eats through Counterblast like nothing else, it does 2 a turn, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering how much guard you need to do, and that you need 3 for the Divine Skill turn, it can actually be really hard to maintain. We're on 4 copies of Detonation Mutant Bone Mine, who, at the end of the battle, we boost. As long as your order zone has a set order, you can toss it a soul to countercharge 1. And then we got 4 Sentinels. Going into the trigger units, I'm on 7 critical triggers. We're on 4 shield fronts. The extra guard value is perfectly fine, and like I said, with the Divine Skill being, in my opinion, the best defensive skill in the game, I really wanted to lean into that, so I went for the front triggers, 4 heals, and of course, it's a Brantgate deck. The OT we're on is the Star Deity Dragon of Infinitude, Elder Breath, who has the additional effect to double the power and critical of all of your front row units until the end of the turn. Now, before I get into the pros and cons, people who have played this deck might be noticing that a card is missing, that being Verdal Hedy. There's a simple reason I am not playing it. I think this card sucks. I think it's a really bad card, honestly. The restand, yeah, gives it a 4th attack, but it can't be boosted. It has to be the first battle of the turn, and it eats a counterblast in a deck that's already tearing through its counterblasts. The on-play Soul Blast 2 to draw a card if you have 2 or more automod gauges is nice, but it's not enough. I'd much rather have the 2 Phaetoristics that can just loop each other forever. Along with that, moving into the pros and cons, first off, like I said, I've said it a few times, this Divine Skill is one of the greatest defensive abilities in the standard format. It's a shame it's the Divine Skill, so it's only once, but when you do it, you're going to turn a +3 for the turn, not including stuff like retiring Odd Warfront, or any other or things you do to conserve your hand size or dig more, to a +5, which those 2 extra cards are likely going to be a lot of guard value. This deck thins really well with 5 from Impauldio every turn, and 5 when you hit the Headway Rooter Dragon. And along with that, I've really leaned into the fence with the 20k guard fronts, the Persona Shield tickets, and the Nebula Invokes being maxed out. Along with that, the pressure from the Divine Skill will force your opponent to check it. They will have to do something about it. Because you're getting a lot of cards in hand, and as everyone knows, the best defense is a good offense. You're going to force your opponent to work through their resources, so that extra guard value you have, plus the extra damage you've done, the extra pressure you've put on them, means you are always going to live through their turn. But one of the biggest cons of the deck is, like I said, this deck eats through its counterblast. Doing the Divine Skill, that is a 3 counterblast turn, because you are always going to be doing it when you have Avenged Star 2 to maximize the cards going into hand as to survive. That's 3 counterblast, and then you're always doing 2 every turn with Paul Vinstar. So you need to be seeing your Bubble Mines. They are so important. I think one of the biggest things this deck could honestly use to really improve it is an in-archetype countercharger that is a slightly bigger booster or an additional shield. Something that countercharges when it goes into the Automod gauge as a once per turn would be incredibly powerful for the deck and would really bring it up. I think from where it's sitting at, like, kinda rogue. I think having an additional guy you can just throw out to guard would push this deck over. But that's just my opinion. This is just my deck profile. If you guys like the profile, like the deck, like listening to me yap, go ahead, please do all the YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that jazz. And I'll see you all next time. Ciao.